Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Round the Nation right here. TYT Nation, Jeff Waldorf here with you on this Monday evening. Happy weekend. What? Okay, anyway, hopefully you guys had a great weekend. I did. Apparently I'm still a little discombobulated today. But of course, it's a Monday, and you know how Mondays are. So, anyway, look, we got a great show for you guys today. First, of course, we're going to talk about our lazy-ass president. Can I say that? Yes, I can. The difference between weather and climate, again. Then we have a strange defense on Trump's tax scam. Coming from Fox News, surprising. And then we're going to talk about Representative Ilhan Omar. Did she do something wrong? And why is the establishment after her this time? Then we'll go to hand washing. Does a member of Fox and Friends not wash their hands? Gross. That's a nasty story. And then we've got Tucker Carlson's latest rant against progressives. And do they tip? Do progressives tip? Interesting. So there's a lot of fun stuff today. And some serious stuff as well. So buckle up. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Not only that, but I want to thank some members over the weekend here. We got 3 new members signing up for the membership. That's Lincoln England, William Wirch, and Elijah Amote. So thank you, those 3 new members. I also want to give some patron shout-outs to some of the longtime patrons that we've had. I'm going to start going through and reading off the names of some of the patrons, and it's going to take a while. But your name, of course, will be given a shout-out. So we're going to start out with For the Truth, AB, Abdullah Ba, and Abina Akoto. So those are 4 of the members here through our Patreon. You want to sign up, patreon.com/TYTNation, or you can sign up for membership by hitting the join button on our page on YouTube. And the difference is, of course, Patreon you can give however you want, however much you want, $1, $3, $5, $10, whatever you want to give. Whereas YouTube memberships is $4.99. And so basically it's just how you choose to support the show. And either way, it goes to supporting the show. So I want to thank everybody for signing up to become a member, and also thank the patrons. All right. Anyway, so now with that out of the way, let's sort of jump into it. We'll start out with Trump, of course. Obligatory Trump story, go. Okay. Now, over the weekend, President Trump angrily took to Twitter to talk about his use of unstructured executive time. Now, during executive time, of course, that's when he's free to talk to his friends on the phone. He calls them up all the time. Tweets and watches Fox and Friends, sometimes does all 3 at the same time. Now, this latest offense comes after another release. Yes, there was a release earlier, the president's schedule, and then there was another release over the weekend. Now, this new release, of course, shows that the president is still spending about 60% of his work time, not overall time, just his work time, 60% of it, doing basically nothing. Now, here's what he tweeted. Quote, the media was able to get my work schedule, something very easy to do. Really? Then why is it such a big deal? Why is it such a big deal that it got leaked? Anyway, it should have been reported as a positive, not negative. When the term executive times is used, I am generally working, not relaxing. In fact, I probably work more hours than almost any past president. Which, of course, is absolutely false, but he continues. The fact is, when I took over as president, our country was a mess. Depleted military, endless wars, a potential war with North Korea, all false. VA, high taxes and too many regulations. What have you done for the VA anyway? Too many taxes, regulations, border immigration, and healthcare problems, and much more. I had no choice but to work very long hours. No, you know what he did in the first year of his presidency? He worked really, really hard trying to cut his own taxes. And he was very successful at doing so. And of course, right now, the tax plan sits at about 30% approval rating. Because most of the country, 70%, want to actually raise taxes on the incredibly wealthy. But furthermore, he's got one tweet to end that. He says, "No president has ever worked harder than me, cleaning up the mess I inherited." Oh yes, the mess from Obama, which is what? Lower deficits, to which I've criticized him for, because I think we actually need more investment spending, not more austerity, but okay, anyway. The difference between that, of course, is that President Trump increased the deficit by giving tax cuts for rich people. And so he shifted more resources of the economy towards rich people who, again, I shouldn't have to explain this. They already have all the money. That's why they're rich. Anyway, not only that, but you had unemployment that was continuing to fall during President Obama. This is not what President Obama inherited. You remember what Obama inherited? A massive recession with gigantic amounts of job losses. And President Obama did turn that around and ended up giving Trump a pretty decent economy. And not great, of course. And again, I've criticized the Obama economy, the Obama recovery, where, again, most of the money ended up going to the very wealthy. Trump has basically made it so that even more money goes to the incredibly wealthy. So all of that stuff pretty much is a lie. Now, I mean, I guess everything except for the endless war. Of course, we were having endless war. And guess what? We're still having endless war. But of course, to give Trump a little bit of credit, he does want to take us out of Syria. And I think that's actually the correct approach. And of course, it's also one of the things that mainstream media and the establishment, well, they despise, because the establishment is made up of warmongers. But anyway, give him small credit on that one. The rest is lies. The president is lazy. He literally does nothing but watch Fox and Friends, golf, tweet, and eat hamburgers. In fact, Twitter, they jumped in to point this out. We'll start with a couple of tweets from Emma Kennedy. She says, golf, tweet, golf, tweet, golf, tweet, watch TV, eat hamburgers, golf, tweet. That's all you do. That's true. Actually, one quick correction on that, Emma. He doesn't eat hamburgers. He eats hamburgers while drinking Diet Coke. Lawrence Tribe tweets, does anybody believe this BS? Trump himself might actually believe that watching Fox and tweeting crap is hard work. But anyone else? Maybe some of his brain-dead supporters. Matthew Dick says, this is our fourth I work hard tweet in the last 2 days. Methinks the lady doth protest too much, Donald. And look, when you have to defend your schedule so ardently when it shows that you're incredibly lazy, you know you're being lazy, and you know you don't want to stop being lazy. Because he comes out and he says, well, no, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not going to change anything. I'm not being late. In fact, I'm working super hard. I'm working harder than you. I'm working harder than anybody. Nobody has ever worked so hard as me. And that's how Trump does things. But here's the thing. Being president is way different than being the CEO of a large company. Where, look, everybody else, when you're the CEO, does all the hard work, and you get to sit in your butt and you get to make decisions. That's it. Politics is a little bit different, right? You might actually have to come up with ideas and strategies. You got to pay attention to briefings and maybe sit and learn things that might help you become more effective at your job. Remember, you are the commander-in-chief. You actually have to pay attention to briefings. Trump does none of those things. He can't sit through a briefing to save his life. He gets bored. So, and look, according to Lindsey Graham, he's a, quote, one-pager kind of guy. That's Lindsey Graham, one of his most ardent supporters. During one of the confirmation hearings, right, they were joking about how Trump was basically a one-pager guy, kind of guy. He only reads one page. He doesn't care about the rest. He doesn't care about intelligence. and he can't stay focused on anything. And again, I think it's hilarious how they point that out, even though these people are some of the biggest Trump sycophants in Congress. But they know it. They know it. How sad. Speaking of sad, more tweets. Andy Ostry says, no president in history ever had to work so hard to convince us that he works so hard. Sad. And look, if he spent that time working, reading, and learning, well, he'd at least know some things, and maybe wouldn't bumble and bungle everything he touches. But he has no interest in that. He's not intellectual curious, right? And look, I guess at least if he's going to stay ignorant, then I'm glad he's lazy. I'm glad he doesn't work. Imagine the damage he could do if he wasn't lazy. Now, I just have one more tweet here to kind of cap this off, and I want to go over it because I think it's kind of funny. The Fire Viking says, tweeting on the can doesn't count. To which I say, let's be fair, I think everybody does that. It's kind of what smartphones and Twitter are for. Just saying. Okay. Moving on. All right. So recently, President Trump attacked a Democratic candidate. This is Minnesota Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar. Now, she, you might not have heard of her, or you might have heard of her. She's not really, it doesn't really matter to talk about her all that much, except that she just announced her intention to run for president in 2020. Again, I think most of you are like, who? Well, anyway, when she was giving that announcement, she was giving it in Minnesota, of course, in the middle of winter. And so the president pointed out, oh, look at how snowy it is in Minnesota. Where's your global warming now? In fact, she said in her speech that she was going to have the U.S. rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement, something Donald Trump pulled out of, as well as support a Green New Deal. Well, that's great. That's fantastic. I'm massively in favor of the Green New Deal. But Trump couldn't help himself, and he attacked her on the false premise that because there is snow, because it is snowing, well, climate change must not exist. He said, it happened again. Amy Klobuchar announced that she is running for president, talking proudly of how fighting global warming while standing in a virtual blizzard of snow, ice, and freezing temperatures. Bad timing. By the end of her speech, she looked like a snowman woman. Ridiculous, right? But this is somebody who was too stupid to understand that climate and weather are different. And he doesn't understand that you can have a warming planet and still actually have snow. I know, it's a strange concept. But let me tell you what NASA says. NASA is a government agency in the Trump administration. They say, weather is what conditions of the atmosphere are over a short period of time. And climate is how the atmosphere behaves over relatively long periods of time. So there is a difference here. It is a time difference. And what is going on with the climate over, long periods of time? I mean, look, if you want to talk long periods of geologic time, when you're talking hundreds of millions of years, right? We're going a little bit more short term, right? Say over the last 200 years or so. Well, the last 5 hottest years on record that we have since we started measuring global temperatures were 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2018. The last 5 hottest years on record. I wonder if that says something about the, climate. And look, 2019 is likely going to be even warmer on record, and it's not just in one geographic area, but it's all over the planet, worldwide. So while it might be snowing in Minnesota in the middle of freaking winter, duh, but in Australia, there is record heat. And it does not mean that climate change, that global warming isn't real. And look, when summer comes around in the United States, there will likely be record hot temperatures like we have seen last year. So spare me this whole thing. This is what climate change does. It makes the extremes more extreme and makes those extremes happen more often. Like, for example, let me give you that, talk about that polar vortex, right? Now, I'm in the Midwest. We just had a polar vortex, right? It was last week, right? So the reason that we had one is because, at least this is a theory, how what they're saying, and that scientists, right? They're saying that that polar vortex was caused by the warming climate, which disrupted some of the polar winds that kept that cold Arctic air in place, right? So without those winds keeping it in place, because of that disrupted climate, the jet stream, you had that polar vortex drift down into the United States. And so taking that polar air with it. And as the planet warms, there are more disruptions like that should be expected. But Donald Trump's an idiot. He's not a smart person. He's not a stable genius. And there is no changing his mind. As one of his advisors had said, once he's made up his mind on what he believes the facts are, nothing's going to change his mind. He believes what he believes. Which sounds a lot like the Fox News audience, by the way. And look, he once even claimed that climate change was nothing more than a Chinese hoax invented to hurt the United States. What a ridiculous belief. You have 99% of the world's scientists that agree that climate change is real and that the driver to the rate of climate change being so high is human activity. Again, climate has always changed, right? You always hear that argument from right-wingers. And in that respect, yes, climate has always changed, but particularly slowly. It changes very slowly. The problem is, since the Industrial Revolution, it has been changing much more rapidly, which is very problematic. So, the problem with that is that it's less time for plants and animals and human beings to be able to adapt. We are part of a cycle. We're part of nature, right? We depend on plants and animals for food. And what's the problem here with climate change and a warming planet is that they're not going to be able to adapt quickly enough to the warming of the atmosphere and the oceans too. And if they can adapt and they die out, what happens to the people that depend on them? What happens to the industries that depend on them? No, our entire way of life will end up collapsing. And so that's a real problem. That's why we have to do something on climate change. It's about making sure our way of life does not fall apart because we depend on so many different things. Now, Klobuchar, of course, responded to this by saying that science supported her policies. Quote, "Science is on my side." Well, okay, generally I agree with that, except for the fact, and I know I'm going to get a little nitpicky here, but in reality, science isn't on anyone's side. Science is simply facts, right? Or they find facts. And what does Ben Shapiro say all the time? Facts don't care about your feelings. And if you're dismissing climate change because you just don't feel like it's real, well then, for one, you're doing oil company propaganda, fossil fuel company propaganda, and you're helping rich people get super rich that aren't going to be around long enough to be able to feel the effects of climate change. So they don't care. They're like, what am I going to care in 2100? I'm going to be dead. I'm going to be dead before 2150 or 2050, but I'm going to make all this money in the meantime, so who cares? I don't care about your kids. I don't care about your grandkids. I don't even care about my own, except that they're going to have billions of dollars. So they'll be fine. But your kids, whatever, don't care. And two, you seem to be okay with the destruction of society. Because unchecked, the reality is climate change will eventually destroy our way of life. And we need to do something about it to mitigate that before it happens. Okay. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We've got Fox News stories. Ilhan Omar? That's a great story here. where I get mad at the establishment and more. So stay here. I'll be back in a couple minutes. Then we got more show for you guys today. So, send your super chats, your comments. I'll read those after the break, and we'll do that. Stay right here around the nation. Welcome back to the show. Around the Nation right here. Jeff Waldorf here with you. Let's dive into some of the stories here. And let's go to Fox News' new defense of, or at least one Fox host's defense of the tax cuts. All right, let's change that real quick. All right. So it's tax time, and there's a lot of people who have already filed, and they've been noticing that they have not been getting as much in tax returns as they had last year. Now, that's despite, of course, the GOP's massive tax cuts. Well, now, wait a minute. Now, one of the problems of the tax cuts, this is a middle-class tax cut, the Republicans said. It's not going to help the rich. It's not going to affect them. We're going to cut their loopholes, but we're going to lower their rates, and they're going to end up being revenue neutral. It's really going to be a middle-class tax cut, right? Well, now, how did that work out? Well, it turns out that a lot of people are enraged because they have seen their taxes go up. Now, one Fox News host, however, doesn't agree with that and believes that he has an explanation. Watch.
Average tax returns, so far 10% of American households have filed their taxes, and so far the average refund is down more than 8% this year.
Yeah, I mean, apparently tax people who really do this focus on it say the biggest problem, the main problem is people are not adjusting their paycheck withholdings. They got all these different taxes and they came through with the same paycheck withholdings. Most experts say 2/3 of Americans will indeed have a nice significant tax cut. Only 6% will pay higher
Obviously,
taxes.
there's going to be political consequences there, of course, because there's that tie.
It could be if there's disingenuous reporting on it. You know, if we drill down further like you and I are doing, people will know that
Maybe
it's
we'll
not.
do that this week, Charles Payne. We've got to leave it there.
Oh, man.
Oh, man. Yeah, you sound really upset about that. Oh, I don't get to drill down and show how I'm actually not being honest about this? Oh, darn. Ah, it's too bad. I really wanted to show how I'm a complete fraud. No, most people did not get a massive tax cut. Look, the people he runs with, the fellow millionaires, and they got a tax cut, but that's because they're rich. Middle class barely got a tax cut. In fact, in some places, their taxes went up. Like, for example, New York, LA, San Francisco. A lot of the states that actually have a state income tax. Well, one of the changes in the tax cut was actually the fact that you can't deduct that anymore. So there are a lot of people in places where there is a higher state tax that you can't deduct from your federal taxes anymore. That, of course, made your tax bill go way up. So, and to that, he says, oh, no, you just need to adjust your withholdings. It's not the fact that you didn't get a tax cut and that all the benefits went to the incredibly wealthy. No, it's your fault. You did it. Now, wait a minute. If you're withholding taxes, if you're withholding more or having the, them withhold more to get a bigger tax return, well, then that's not a tax cut. They're just taking more out of you. And then you're overpaying, and then they send you the difference. Now, if you're withholding less and you're getting a smaller return, but you're having bigger paychecks, as is, what happens, well, that's also not a tax cut. And and there's possibility that you could pay in, too, if you adjust your withholding too little. No, here's what's going on, right? The middle-class tax cut is so small that it's nearly imperceptible. I mean, let me give you an example. When this passed, you had former Speaker Paul Ryan, who shared an image of a school teacher's paycheck, right? Now, she's like, oh, I'm saving $1.50 a week. $1.50. This is a regular person school teacher, right? He bragged about it. It's $1.50. Now, you had over 90% of all beneficiaries of Trump tax cuts saving hundreds, tens of thousands a year, right? These are rich people and corporations, multinationals. And they saved a ton of money. I think the average was about $63,000 per year or more. And of course, as I said, the loopholes, yeah, they got rid of loopholes, but most of them were for the middle class. Also, they could, of course, ram this thing through using parliamentary tricks. The main one, of course, was budget reconciliation, right? It's not the media's fault for accurately reporting that the American people have not gotten what they were promised. And this is nothing more than rich people on Fox News doing damage control. Look, their own poll found that 70% of Americans want to raise taxes on rich people making over $10 million a year. They want to do a marginal tax rate of 70%. 65% in that same poll wants to raise taxes on people making over $1 million a year. Taxing the rich turns out it's kind of a slam dunk. Even for Fox News viewers, even for conservatives. that overwhelmingly agree that, yeah, we should tax the rich more, we should tax them fairly. Look, Fox News, though, you got to understand, Fox News, and let's be fair, CNN, MSNBC, they're old, gigantic corporations. And not only that, but their anchors make over like millions of dollars a year. So what they're going to do is that they're going to go out, they're going to lie, and they're going to defend low taxes for themselves. They're going to blame you. They're going to blame other members of the media for lying and say, oh, no, you took these tax cuts out of context. No, it turns out you saved a lot, but, or you would have saved a lot if you would have adjusted your withholdings. That's not a tax cut. That's basically blaming the victim of this massive theft. That's what this is. All right. Anyway, that's Fox News for you. Let's do more. Let's go to Ilhan Omar. So Representative Ilhan Omar is one of the first Muslim women in the House of Representatives. Now, she is being attacked by establishment Democrats teaming up with the right wing. Apparently, they are referring to her as anti-Semitic, right? So now, earlier today, and this whole started, earlier on Sunday, Representative Omar pointed out an issue of money in politics. Now, money in politics is something that I talk about on the show all the time. How money basically buys you influence and basically helps these politicians make a decision on what policies they wish to go through, right? That they wish to push through. So there's a lot of money, in politics, and that, again, is influence. However, apparently, if you're talking about the money that AIPAC, which is an Israeli, a pro-Israeli lobbying group, you want to point out how they use money in politics to gain influence, well, that apparently makes you anti-Semitic. Now, see, here's the thing, right? Now, this admission should not be controversial, right? Israel has lobbyists. That's AIPAC, right? You know who else also has lobbyists? Saudi Arabia. A lot of other countries have lobbyists. A lot of special interests have lobbyists. And they all lobby politicians in order to pass pieces of legislation, right? Still, apparently Representative Omar stepped in it when she tweeted, quote, "It's all about the Benjamins," in response to a news story about House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy threatening action against both herself and Representative Rashida Tlaib. Now, of course, Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar are in favor of Palestinian rights. So McCarthy had said that their pro-Palestinian comments have been more reprehensible than Representative Steve King's history of open white supremacy. Really? Oh, okay, man. Sure. All right. You want to say that? Well, maybe we'll come back to that. But now she also added, rightly so, that AIPAC donates funds to secure pro-Israel legislation from Congress, in the same way that the NRA and pro-gun lawmakers receive support from the NRA, as well as unions that donate to the campaigns of pro-labor politicians. So it just shows that, look, you will have these special interest groups and they will donate money to politicians that share their beliefs. And that's how this operates. What's wrong with that? Well, when you talk about AIPAC, it's apparently anti-Semitic. Apparently. And look, again, a lot of right-wingers were, of course, attacking Ilhan Omar because they always attack her. And anti-Semitism is just another one of the charges they try to levy on her. And unfortunately, establishment Democrats jumped in as well, starting with Nancy Pelosi, and of course, there are some other Jewish members. Now, they put out a statement. They said legitimate criticism of Israel's policies is protected by the values of free speech and democratic debate that the United States and Israel share. I don't know about that. But she adds, Congresswoman Omar's use of anti-Semitic tropes and prejudicial accusations about Israel's supporters is deeply offensive. We condemn these remarks and call upon Congresswoman Omar to immediately apologize for these hurtful comments. As Democrats and as Americans, the entire Congress must be fully engaged in denouncing and rejecting all forms of hatred, racism, prejudice, and discrimination wherever they are encountered. But wait a minute. Anti-Semitic tropes pointing out how lobbying works is not anti-Semitic. But, okay, so she's accused of using tropes, right? Well, what trope is that? Well, look, let's explain. The right wing, especially the far right, loves to push the idea that Jews control the world, right? And so that they all have the money, they use your money, power, influence, they're all bankers or whatever, and that's how they control the world. Well, that's ridiculous. Their favorite attack is to go after George Soros. Now, George Soros funds some liberal causes, but the right's like, oh no, everybody on the left, they don't believe in their positions. They're just getting funded by George Soros, and they're communists. Again, that's ridiculous. Me personally, I can only speak for myself, but I've never received a George Soros check. It's a ridiculous smear, right? But the thing is, that conspiracy is not the same as pointing out how the system actually works. Lobbyists paying politicians in order to get them to be more receptive to voting for pieces of legislation. That's how government actually works right now with our system of money in politics. But these politicians, whenever you point that out, they're so incensed that you would talk about it. And in the issue of AIPAC, they've got a weapon on their side, and that's the weapon of anti-Semitism, right? So if you point this out, you're anti-Semitic. Ridiculous, right? That's why this is a smear. And look, let me give you some numbers here, and we'll see if that's true or not. Because look, one of the tweets, defending this attack on Representative Omar is saying, well, it is absolutely not true that Israeli lobby pays off politicians. Really? Well, the Center for Responsive Politics showed that AIPAC spent more than $3.5 million in 2018 alone on pro-Israel measures that lawmakers voted on, including funding for Israel and the bipartisan Senate bill to ban boycotts of Israeli goods and services. That is the anti-BDS bill, which is actually against the Constitution. It is an unconstitutional piece of legislation. And of course, 18 senators and 13 members of the House had also received more than $100,000 each from pro-Israel groups. I wonder which way they voted. But no, pointing that out, anti-Semitic. And apparently, the Center for Responsive Politics, which actually tracks money in politics and where it goes, including NRA money, including Saudi Arabian money, etc., 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 well, that organization must also be anti-Semitic. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. No, what happened is these politicians, they got their hand caught in the cookie jar. And so they cry and cry and cry. And what weapon do they have? Unfortunately, they have anti-Semitism. That exists. That is real. But when you weaponize it against people, against progressives, then you are doing the cause of fighting anti-Semitism a huge disservice. And then you make it easier for people on the right wing with their insane conspiracy theories to do actual anti-Semitism. Because you silence everyone on the left. And you silence everyone on the left when it comes to the issue of money in politics. It is deeply hurtful, nonetheless. Nonetheless. By the way, you want to know who also gets money from a different country? Saudi Arabia, Jared Kushner. Do we treat that the same? No, of course not. And other than the incredibly damaging tropes, which there are other tropes to people in Saudi Arabia, for example, there's Islamophobia, right? That exists massively on the right wing. And yet, there are right-wing politicians that take a lot of money from Saudi Arabia. It's the same, but way different reaction. But anyway, I have a quote here from Rebecca Vilkomerson, who is the executive director of the Jewish Voice for Peace. Now, she points this out, rightly so, as a smear. She said, would talking about the role of the NRA and gun control laws attract this kind of attention? Lobbies influence politics. I don't think that's controversial to say. And she's right. She nails it. The Israeli lobby, unfortunately, pushes laws favorable to the right-wing Israeli government. Now, I'm not a fan of the right wing of the Israeli government. And I'm also not a fan to a lot of their policies, especially when it comes to the Palestinian territories, right? I'm not in favor of that. Now, saying that should not be controversial. I'm not saying, nobody is saying we're against Jewish people as a whole. No, what we're saying is maybe this right-wing government shouldn't be able to lobby, and I don't believe any government or any institution should be able to lobby our government. And I definitely believe that since we have this system, it shouldn't be a bad thing to point that out. But unfortunately, when it comes to Israel, it's insane. We have this insanity where you can't call that out because it's apparently anti-Semitism. Ridiculous, right? Now, look, I mentioned the anti-BDS bill, right? Again, that is a way that we have criminalized making the decision to not buy Israeli products. Now, I don't necessarily even agree with the anti-BDS movement, but I agree that they should absolutely have a right to exercise their own buying preferences and not be forced to buy from a government that they disagree with. They should have a choice in what they boycott. The government shouldn't punish people for not choosing to buy things. So, in this case too, you can definitely make an argument that these politicians got influenced into passing this legislation, which is deeply, I believe, anti-American. Now, Representative Omar did apologize for this. She said, "Anti-Semitism is real, and I'm grateful for Jewish allies and colleagues who are educating me on the painful history of anti-Semitic tropes," which again do exist, right? "My intention is never to offend my constituents or Jewish Americans as a whole. We always have to be willing to step back and think through criticism, just as I expect people to hear me when others attack me for my identity. This is why I unequivocally apologize." She did say, though, "At the same time, I reaffirm the problematic role of lobbyists in our politics. Whether it be AIPAC, the NRA, or the fossil fuel industry, it's gone on too long, and we must be willing to address it." But that's what you tried to do. And you immediately got shut down, not just by the right wing, but by the supposed left, who end up actually getting a lot of money from AIPAC. This is how a smear works. And by the way, this whole thing started with the right wing. Now, the interesting thing about the right wing is that they only care about Israel, not because they care about the Jews. No, it's because in their doomsday scenario, Jesus comes back to Israel and kills all the Jews who don't convert to Christianity. That's insane. But unfortunately, again, that's what they believe, and that's the only reason they care so much about Israel. Whereas people on the left actually care about Israel, but we also care about the peace and stability of Israel. That's why we want a two-state solution, because that is the only way you're ever going to get peace. You're ever going to get stability in that region is if you have a two-state solution, both recognized by the international community. Now, the Palestinians have tried to do that, but they have not been allowed thanks to the United States. And I wonder what influenced the United States to go that way. Again, right-wingers here in America and right-wingers in Israel have sort of the same kind of MO. They want to keep power and they want endless conflict so that people are afraid so that they can stay in power and make money. That's what this is about. So, look, this is ridiculous. And we're not allowed, apparently, to point out the real problem: money in politics. And that's why I believe we have to get all the money out. Union money, corporate money, Israeli money, Saudi Arabian money, Planned Parenthood money. It doesn't matter. Get it all out. Get rid of private financing of elections and go completely 100% public. Because when you have private financing of elections, then you end up having these politicians that serve only private interests. And that is not the way a democracy should operate. Okay. Yeah. I think I'm pretty good with that. Okay. Let's move on. Let's go fun. Have a little fun here. Okay. Need to figure out how to start this story, because the information has kind of changed here. Okay. So Pete Hegseth is one of the co-hosts of Fox and Friends, and he said something kind of disgusting on the air. Let's take a look.
Jedediah was doing a news report a short time ago, and Pete had 2 more slices sitting right next to you because he was off camera.
Yeah.
It's a real thing.
He's been.
It's still really good.
This is real. Just for viewers to know, this is yesterday's pizza that he's just pulling
Still
out.
right there.
It's not even.
Yesterday
fresh.
was National Pizza Day, which means it's National Pizza Weekend, which means Pizza Hut lasts for a long time.
He ate Pizza Hut yesterday and raw dough. So basically, anything that's not nailed down, you got to just take the mugs off the table. He might take.
As I told you, my
that.
2019 resolution is to say things on air that I say off air. I don't think I've washed my hands for 10 years. Really, I don't really wash my hands ever.
Help me!
No, I inoculate myself. It's just not, germs are not a real thing. I can't see them. Therefore, they're not real.
So you're becoming immune to all the
exactly.
bacteria.
I can't get sick.
My dad has that theory too. I'm
trying to find a way to move on, but I actually want friends at foxnews.com.
Yes.
Please comment on that, because I feel like we should get some viewer reaction.
Yes.
Look at these hands; look pretty clean to me. You know?
Would you eat day-old pepperoni? We want to know.
Yeah,
Of course.
In the meantime,
Thanks for being here, folks. Sorry we didn't grossing you out on this Sunday.
A lot of news breaking overnight, and the president.
Oh, that's nasty. What the hell? Now, of course, it's obviously, he's got to be joking, right? I mean, never mind the day-old pizza. Because actually, look, if you refrigerate it and eat it the next day, it's fine. You can eat it cold, or you can warm it up, whatever. Although it never quite tastes as good as it does fresh. That's my problem. I need to come up with a way to make pizza that is a day old taste as good as it was on the first day. Like, science, get on that. Seriously. But hand washing, come on, unacceptable. I don't care if it's a joke, man, but you want to tell me, like, if you take a crap, you don't wash your hands afterwards? That's gross. That's gross. That's nasty. Oh, but hey, germs aren't real. You can't see them. No, again, it's a joke. I'm pretty sure it's a joke, because this guy wouldn't be, getting dysentery to own the libs, right? But that's kind of what he was joking about. In fact, he told USA Today, we're on a show and we have fun and we banter. And I'm like, yeah, maybe I haven't washed my hands for 10 years. Ew. If you look at Ed and Jedediah's reaction, they're laughing like we are on every show. Hegseth said the joke was a call out to germ obsessors to lighten up. Hey, you know what? What's ironic about that statement? Donald Trump is a well-known germ obsessor. Like, the guy's a germaphobe. Oops. He said, my half-hearted commentary to the point is, we live in a society where people walk around with bottles of Purell in their pockets, and they sanitize 19,000 times a day, as if that's going to save their life. I take care of myself and all that, but I don't obsess over everything all the time. And look, again, it's sort of the irony here, right? Because Donald Trump obsesses about germs all the freaking time. It's crazy. But he says, oh, no. And what's funny is that this blew up afterwards. After he said that, then he had to come back and say, oh, no, I didn't actually mean that. I do wash my hands. I wash them all the time. I just don't Purell like crazy. Well, I don't either, right? But that's still gross. That's still a pretty gross joke. So, but he said that he was, quote, sitting back and watching his Twitter feed and laughing. Quote, it's ridiculous to me because of how people take literal and serious certain things and their heads explode. It's ridiculous. No, it's just gross. It's nasty. And so, again, I'm going to joke about that. The problem is, as we've seen it before, people take that stuff serious sometimes. Again, you got people on the right that think crazy things. That, like, climate change isn't real. And that, oh, you know, if you, hey, germs don't exist, you can't see them, right? Insanity. So maybe you need to be more careful with your so incredibly gullible audience not to say things that are actually really, really bad for your health. So, hey, we're just looking out for you guys. This has been a public service announcement. Okay. So, let's move on. One more story here. So Fox News is cut. Wow. That was almost a little Freudian slip. I almost called him Cucker Carlson. Oops. Try that again. Fox News' Tucker Carlson went on a rant against progressives last week because apparently we don't tip. Take a look.
It all makes sense now. Ask any waiter how well progressives tip. Seriously, ask a waiter. A group of progressive activists arrives at a restaurant. They linger for hours delivering passionate lectures about the horrors of income inequality. When they leave, they shaft the working people who serve them food, the very people they claim to care about. Only with progressivism is this behavior possible. Precisely because they care so much about structural inequality, progressives don't have to leave actual cash on an actual table for actual workers. Their tip is their profound sense of caring. Too bad waiters can't pay the rent with that.
What? Now, I love how Tucker Carlson, a multimillionaire, has attempted to turn himself into a champion of the working class in a way that shows you that there is a strain of populism on the right, and Tucker Carlson is actually trying to talk to that audience. I guess that's kind of a good thing, right? But of course, like much of the right wing, it's not at all based on factual information. There's actually no evidence that progressives don't tip. That's absurd. No, look, there is other evidence, of course, that people who actually make less, that have less, are actually more generous with that money. Those don't happen to be people who are generally really conservative. But nonetheless, personally, let's talk about tipping, right? So I'm a progressive. You guys know this. Well, okay, I went out to dinner with my wife. I took her out to a restaurant over the weekends. First time we had a date in forever, and the first time we could actually be able to afford to go out. So I took her out, and I tipped 20%. That's a fairly decent tip, right? It's actually what you're supposed to do. And personally, I always try to get it at least 15 to 20% every time I go out and every time I order in. Now, that's not, of course, often, but look, the reason that I do that is because I know that these people are trying to survive, and they do so on tips, right? I mean, look, what we should do, talking about legislation, right, more than what we can just personally do, is to maybe push legislation that would increase their base pay, so that maybe they don't have to rely so much on tips, where a gratuity can maybe actually be used what it was meant for, a bonus for good work. Nonetheless, that would involve raising the tip minimum wage from the federal $2.13 an hour to something more. And that, of course, is not something that people like Tucker Carlson are willing to do. Oh, no, you can't raise the minimum wage, especially the tip minimum wage. No, that's going to hurt the restaurant industry. Is it now? Come on. And of course, I love how he loves to blame progressives for not tipping without evidence, while he ignores and fights against raising the wages of workers. It's a little bit of hypocrisy there, Tucker. What a champion of working people you are. I do both. I tip 15 to 20%, and I push for a higher minimum wage. Why? Because I know that there are working people out there that actually rely on that. That's how they survive. I have friends that work in that industry that they have, relied on tips. But here's the thing. The whole point of that segment was to go after people on the left, right? And, of progressives, right? He doesn't know a progressive when he sees one. He really doesn't understand, or maybe he does and just lies about it, what progressives do and what believe, right? What they believe. Now, you want to go after limousine liberals like Nancy Pelosi. Well, that's great. She's bourgeois, right? So, her and Hillary Clinton, or what I really wanted to call her for some reason, Hot Sauce Hillary, with the hot sauce in her purse. But look, if you want to criticize those people for being the, bourgeois liberals and limousine liberals, whatever, and not understanding working people, I'm with you, Tucker Carlson. I'm with you. I can understand. I will also criticize those people because they're not progressive and they don't understand what working people actually want and what they go through, right? But again, he doesn't understand. These right-wingers literally can't tell that there is a schism inside the Democratic Party between leftists and radical centrists. Or they don't care and just smear anyone to the left of them as old the same. Now, I don't know about Tucker Carlson, right? Sometimes he gets it right when he goes after the billionaires, using that little populism, right? But then it always comes back to attacking the left and blaming them for the country's problems. And as usual with Tucker Carlson, sometimes he gets just so close, but he just falls short. Sorry, Tucker. Try harder. Get the facts. Okay. That's it, guys. That's all I got for you guys today. I want to see if there are any super chats or new memberships today. And if you haven't already, you can sign up to be a member. Let's see. Channel membership is the same. So again, if you want to sign up, you can hit the join button. Not only that, but if you want to be a patron and be able to pledge whatever you can afford or whatever you'd like, go to patreon.com/TYTNation. We're also still running our fundraiser for the camera. That is GoFundMe.com/TYTNation camera. So that helps out. And we also have merchandise too. We've got a t-shirt and we've got a mug. So you want a mug with TYT Nation on it, you can order one of those at our Teespring. So you can go there. There'll be a link in the description. All right, guys, that's it. Again, like and share the stream. If you haven't already, like and share our clips. And thanks, guys. TYT is next. And remember, love you. Remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. We'll see y'all tomorrow.